And it was images like these ones on your screen right now. Images of the mob, the insurrection that Donald Trump outright encouraged. Those images led more than 100 members of Congress, including one Republican so far, to call for Trump's removal from office. And as we've reported, there are informal discussions within the Trump administration about invoking the 25th Amendment. If that happened, Trump's vice president and cabinet could immediately hand all powers of the presidency to Mike Pence. Should these growing calls fail, Democratic leaders Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are saying today that their party is ready to impeach him again. But the talk of the 25th Amendment didn't just come out of nowhere today. Back in 2018, Miles Taylor, then an anonymous Trump official, wrote this about the concern from those closest to Trump about his conduct. Quote, given the instability many witnessed, there were early whispers within the cabinet of invoking the 25th Amendment. But no one wanted to precipitate a constitutional crisis. So we'll do what we can to steer the administration in the right direction until one way or another it's over. Joining us now is Miles Taylor. He served as chief of staff for the Department of Homeland Security during the Trump administration. He resigned about a year and a half ago and then revealed himself as the author of that piece published anonymously in the New York Times in 2018. He's now the co-founder and advisor to the group, the Republican Political Alliance for Integrity and Reform. Viewers of this program, I think, hear from some of your former colleagues pretty regularly, folks like Elizabeth Newman. It's a pleasure to have you, and I have to ask you about news that just broke over on CNN. Jake Tapper has interviewed John Kelly, who said that if he was in the cabinet, he would vote to remove Donald Trump today using the 25th Amendment. Why didn't you guys speak up when you were still in government?
Well, I came into this administration not to serve Donald Trump, but with John Kelly, who's someone I very much admire. And I believe John Kelly when he says that. And look, I wish, Nicole, that I had been a cabinet member at that time and had been able to convince the cabinet to take appropriate actions. Unfortunately, I wasn't. But what I'll say, and what you know very much to be true, is that we were so disturbed by what we were witnessing. At least in my opinion, at the time, I felt like the American people needed to know that Donald Trump's cabinet thought he was so unstable that he was unfit for office. And frankly, what a lot of people don't know is in the 2017 and 2018 time period, an informal whip count was done of Donald Trump's cabinet to see if there were enough people who felt the same way about his instability. Ultimately, after Secretary Tillerson was fired, there was a feeling in the cabinet that there were not enough people that would actually support it if push came to shove. And so we had to look at other ways to keep Donald Trump in check. That's how serious it was. And again, people still weren't getting the message. I, of course, then, went and wrote the book to warn people about his reelection. And many of us, as you've noted, Nicole, have been on your program and spent months campaigning to make sure this man did not win reelection. But here's the important point. The American people have voted to remove Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. All we are asking his cabinet to do now is to hasten that decision and to remove him early, because we've seen from yesterday that a single day can represent a threat to this republic. We do not need another single day of this man being commander in chief.
So you've done this once. Let's do this again. Let's do the whip count for anyone that's still there. Pence, how do you think he'd vote after yesterday? He actually, I understand, had to go in and usurp Donald Trump's commander-in-chief authority and communicate with the Pentagon to have National Guard come in and reinforce Capitol Police. Do you think he would vote to remove Trump?
Well, Nicole, it brings me a lot of disappointment to say that in the 2.5 years I was in this administration, I never once saw Mike Pence stand up to the president. I heard the president say horrible, disgusting, un-American, inappropriate, and potentially illegal things in the office with Mike Pence present, and Pence rarely spoke up. That was an enormous disappointment to me because I'm a Hoosier from Indiana like him. But what I do believe to be true about Mike Pence is I do think he believes in his oath to the Constitution, and that if he had enough votes in the cabinet, yes, he would go forward with it. But I think that's the big question. If Pence felt like there weren't enough votes, he wouldn't do it. What I don't think the vice president would do is try to instigate a 25th Amendment vote. I think he would have to see it come to him organically. I don't see the courage in the office of the vice president to do it on their own.
I'm just going through this list. Mike Pompeo, he's probably already in Iowa. Can't imagine him voting. Mark Meadows is on a videotape filmed by Trump's kids yesterday with Kimberly Guilfoyle cheering the mob growing mob urging them to fight. Sonny Perdue, Jeff Rosen. I mean, you stop me if you hear of someone who you think would be for the 25th Amendment. Sonny Perdue, Jeff Rosen.
I'll stop you right now.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll stop you right now, Nicole, because when I look at that list, here's something that really disturbs me, and it upset me about my entire tenure in this administration, is there's a lot of hypocrisy on that list.
Yeah.
There's a lot of names there that you would think would not vote to do this. And in fact, people who, when I came out, that are on that list that I'm seeing on your screen that said publicly, Miles Taylor never said these things in private. None of us felt this way. We all supported the president. There are some of those same people who behind the scenes will say Donald Trump is deranged, he is unfit for office, and he should not be president of the United States. So I think that's the big question mark here. A lot of these people try to portray themselves as supporters of the president to keep their jobs, but behind the scenes think he's unfit. That's, again, hypocrisy and, in my opinion, cowardice. And those people need to take their masks off, step forward, and protect this country.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.